Imagine for a second that you're sitting down on your couch after just a really relentlessly stressful week.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Right. And you boot up this brand new sci-fi video game. You've got your snacks, your headset is on, and you are just primed for some pure, unadulterated escapism.
Just looking to check out for a bit.
Exactly. You're expecting to, blast some aliens, maybe upgrade a laser rifle, and basically just shut your brain off for the night.
That's the classic gaming dopamine hit, right?
Yeah. But instead, like a few hours into navigating this virtual world, you find yourself staring at the screen, genuinely contemplating what it takes to start a family.
It's a complete bait and switch. I mean, you go in looking for that standard adrenaline rush, and you walk away grappling with this really deep-seated desire for parental responsibility.
It is such a wild pivot. And that phenomenon is exactly what we're getting into in today's deep dive.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is. We are unpacking this massive cultural shift in interactive media, largely based on excerpts from an article titled The Pragmata Effect, Protective Masculinity and the Fatherhood Shift.
Which is just a brilliant piece of analysis, honestly.
Totally. So the mission today is to look at how a really mysterious sci-fi game is quietly ripping up the traditional male narrative in gaming.
Yeah, the whole death of the untouchable lone wolf hero.
Exactly, the hyper-violent solo hero. And we're seeing the rise of a character type that is far more grounded in emotional depth and, frankly, in the heavy burden of responsibility.
Right, because you just don't expect a video game about a guy in a heavy mechanized spacesuit to trigger an internal reckoning about fatherhood.
No, not at all. It's like, what does it mean to actually care for another human being?
Well, we're really looking at a collision here, a collision of interactive technology and modern psychology. I mean, for decades, this is a medium that has been entirely defined by isolation. It was always about you, the player, conquering a map, dominating enemies, and, standing alone at the top of a leaderboard.
Right, the ultimate power fantasy.
Exactly. But now, that same engine of conquest is being retooled into an engine for nurturing.
Wow.
Yeah, it changes how players interact with digital spaces, but even more critically, it changes the reflection those spaces cast back onto the players themselves.
That's a great way to put it. Let's ground this in the actual catalyst for this conversation, which is an upcoming title from Capcom called Pragmata.
Right, the astronaut game.
Yeah. You play as this lone astronaut. You're wandering around this incredibly stark, futuristic world that it looks like it was completely abandoned by whoever built it.
It has that very classic eerie sci-fi isolation vibe to it.
Completely. Except you are not alone.
You're tethered to a young girl.
Yes.
And, that single design choice completely shatters the traditional dynamic of an action game.
Because in the early footage we've seen of this game, the mechanics make it very clear that your survival in this hostile environment relies entirely on cooperation.
Right. It's not about how hard your astronaut can punch a robot.
No, not at all. And this young girl, she isn't portrayed as like a piece of luggage you have to drag around. She is essential to making it out alive.
Which forces the player to fundamentally change how they approach every single obstacle.
Yeah.
I mean, if you try to play this like a traditional shooter, running guns blazing, ignoring your surroundings, you will fail.
You're going to die immediately.
Exactly. The game actively punishes the lone wolf mentality.
And if you've played games at any point in, say, the last 20 years, you know how revolutionary that actually feels.
Oh, the escort missions.
Yes. I was just going to say, think about the classic escort mission.
Yeah.
For years, if a game told you to protect an NPC, non-player character, it was literally the most universally despised mechanic in gaming.
Everyone hated them.
You felt like you were babysitting dead weight. The character would invariably just wander right into the line of fire.
They could never defend themselves.
Right. And you, the hyper-lethal hero, would end up just screaming at your TV because this fragile little objective just ruined your perfect run.
It was incredibly frustrating.
But Pragmata flips that trope on its head.
Yeah.
It doesn't make her a liability. It makes the relationship one of absolute interdependence.
Interdependence is the key word there.
Yeah. You literally cannot progress without her specific abilities, and she cannot survive without your protection.
And that interdependence, it really is the core of this entire shift we're talking about. When we look at the legacy of dominant masculinity in virtual spaces,
right,
it has almost exclusively been rooted in sheer power. Like, the male identity was defined by being the biggest, the fastest, the most heavily armed entity in the room.
You just asserted your will over the environment.
Exactly. What we are seeing here, though, is a new male identity, and it's rooted in guidance.
So it's the difference between, like, look at the sheer scale of what I can destroy versus look at how safely I can navigate us through this.
Yes, exactly. It moves the goalposts of what constitutes a power fantasy.
Oh, that's interesting.
The astronaut might be the one wearing the heavy armor, right? He's taking the physical hits. But the strength of the character is derived from mutual reliance.
Right, the armor isn't there to make him a better killer.
No, it's there to make him a better shield.
Man, that is, if developers were banking their massive next-generation IP on this kind of cooperative dynamic, they must know it resonates with people.
Oh, they have years of data backing this up now.
Because we need to look at how we got here. This isn't just one rogue studio trying out some experimental indie concept.
No, this is the evolution of a massive genre.
Yeah, we have to talk about the heavy hitters that paved the way for this. Specifically games like The Last of Us and God of War.
Right, those two franchises are really the foundational pillars of what we're discussing today.
They took huge risks.
They did. They took the risk of injecting profound vulnerability into genres that previously thrived on emotional detachment.
Take The Last of Us, for instance. The entire narrative weight of that experience rested on the emotional bond between Joel and Ellie.
It really proved that a game could make you care about a secondary character just as much as...
If not more than.
Yeah, exactly. If not more than the protagonist you were actually controlling.
And the God of War, you take Kratos. This is a character who, for an entire decade, was the literal poster boy for the rage-filled warrior archetype.
Unadulterated vengeance.
Yes. His only defining personality trait was screaming and killing. He murdered entire pantheons of gods.
It was pure carnage.
Right, and then the developers bring him back years later, and suddenly he's this grieving, learning father who is responsible for a young boy named Atreus.
And notice how the game mechanics in God of War supported that narrative evolution.
How do you mean?
Well, Kratos is still incredibly violent, obviously, but the context of that violence changed completely. You weren't fighting just to conquer anymore. You were fighting to clear a path for your son. You were actively teaching him how to survive in this brutal world.
Okay, but let me throw a wrench in this for a second.
Oh, for it.
Are developers just leaning on a classic Hollywood trope here? I mean, nothing artificially spikes the tension in a story.
Yeah.
Quite like putting a kid in the crosshairs.
It is a classic move.
It's an easy way to make the audience lean forward. So is this just a cheap mechanical trick to raise the stakes? Or are we looking at a deeper psychological hunger from the people actually playing these games?
It's a very fair suspicion, honestly, because the child in peril thing is definitely a well-worn narrative device.
Very well worn.
But if it were just a cheap trick, players would resent the mechanics, just like they resented the old escort missions we talked about.
Oh, that's true. They just find it annoying.
Exactly. The fact that players are forming deep, genuine emotional attachments to these games points to a shift toward what psychologists call relational identity.
Relational identity. Okay, let's break that down. What does that actually look like when you've got a controller in your hands?
Well, historically, media portrayed male protagonists through the lens of pure independence.
The lone wolf.
Right. A character's identity was completely self-contained. He was defined by his own physical achievements, the scars he collected, the enemies he defeated.
You're John Rambo.
Exactly. But relational identity shifts that focus entirely. It defines a male character not by his solo conquests, but by the person he is protecting.
So his value isn't measured by the monsters he slays, but by the child he sustains.
Which is a profound departure from the norm in gaming. Kratos isn't just a god killer anymore. His primary identity is a father desperately trying to break a cycle of violence for his son.
Wow. Yeah.
And Joel's entire morality in The Last of Us hinges on his connection to Ellie.
Right.
And in Pragmata, the astronaut's purpose is defined by his connection to the young girl. It introduces a completely different value system into the core loop of the game.
It demands that the player prioritize responsibility over absolute power.
Exactly.
And it highlights legacy over mere survival. That framing from the article really stuck with me.
It's a crucial distinction.
In a traditional survival game, your only goal is to make it to the next checkpoint. But when you introduce this relational identity, you aren't just trying to survive the night. You're trying to ensure that someone else makes it to the future.
You're building something that outlasts you.
Yes.
And that desire to build a legacy is what begins to tap into the real-world psychology of the players. We are moving from a mindset of me to a mindset of we.
Let's follow that psychological thread because this is where it connects so deeply with, younger male audiences right now.
Right.
The term that keeps coming up in the source material is protective masculinity. And it's defined so specifically here. It's a model where strength expresses itself through care and patience, rather through control.
The distinction between care and control is absolutely vital here.
Tell me more about that.
Traditional dominance is entirely about control. You control the map, you control the resources, you control the outcome of the battle.
You're the boss.
Right. But protective masculinity requires a willingness to relinquish some of that control.
Ooh, that's hard for gamers.
It is. You have to be patient. You have to guide the other character, allow them to make mistakes and support them, rather than simply dictating their every move.
You know, thinking about how you actively press buttons to engage in this kind of patience, it's almost like, well, that's like a flight simulator, but for fatherhood.
A flight simulator for fatherhood.
Yeah.
That perfectly captures the mechanism at play here.
Because think about what a flight simulator does. It puts a pilot in a highly realistic, interactive environment where they can experience the stress of flying, make terrible mistakes.
Crash the plane.
Yeah, crash the plane, and then hit reset without anyone actually getting hurt. Video games are doing the exact same thing for the emotional weight of parenting.
It's active, not passive.
Right, unlike a movie where you just passively watch a dad make a tough choice on screen, a game forces you to make the choice.
You have to push the button.
Exactly. You are the one deciding to share your limited health pack with the kid instead of using it yourself. You try to rush through a level, you leave the kid behind, they get caught, and you fail.
You actively experience the consequence.
Of your selfishness or your impatience, you have to genuinely earn the trust of that digital companion.
And that element of safe failure is crucial for psychological exploration.
How so?
Well, for many men, the real world doesn't offer a lot of safe spaces to explore profound vulnerability.
That's very true.
Society still places a heavy premium on men having everything figured out, being the stoic provider.
Never showing weakness.
Right. But in this virtual environment, a player can safely engage with the desire for stability, the desire for family, and the heavy realization that they want a purpose extending beyond their own immediate gratification.
They get to feel the emotional weight of needing to be needed.
Exactly.
And if you're listening to this and you've played any of these games, just think about your own physical reactions.
Oh, physiological response is real.
It really is. Think about how your heart rate spikes. In God of War, my pulse didn't jump when Kratos took a hit. He's practically invincible.
He's fine.
Right, but my heart rate spiked the second an enemy grabbed Atreus. The developers are literally hacking our real-world protective instincts and rewiring what gives us a dopamine hit.
We're getting rewarded for nurturing instead of destroying.
Exactly.
That interactivity bridges the gap between observing an emotion and genuinely experiencing it. You aren't just watching a cinematic cutscene about a character developing patience.
Right.
You, the person holding the controller, must physically exhibit patience to clear the level. You are actively practicing the tenets of protective masculinity, building those neural pathways over a 30 or 40-hour experience.
Man, okay, let's bring this all the way home. We have to bridge the gap between the virtual mechanics of a console game and the actual reality of the person listening to this right now.
Right, the real-world application.
Yeah. Why does this matter? How does spending 40 hours as a virtual dad in a sci-fi suit bleed out into the real world and, shift our actual societal roles?
It really comes down to visibility and normalization.
Okay.
When multiple massive blockbuster titles center their entire gameplay loop around the father-child dynamic, it normalizes that specific identity. It takes fatherhood and makes it highly aspirational.
So it takes this dusty old-school idea of the distant dad reading the newspaper in the armchair.
The detached patriarch.
Yeah, and replaces it with a guy who is actively, intensely involved in the emotional heavy lifting of raising a kid.
Exactly the right phrasing. Emotional heavy lifting. It reframes fatherhood as an active initiative rather than a passive state of being.
Right.
Traditional media often relegated the father figure to the background, right? He was the stoic provider while the actual emotional growth or adventure happened elsewhere.
Or he was just totally absent.
Exactly. But these games put the player directly in charge of the nurturing process. It expands how men view traditional family structures by normalizing emotional depth and active caregiving as ultimate displays of strength.
Okay, hold on. Let me just pump the brakes for a second because I'm struggling to make this final leap.
Sure.
We're talking about a guy playing a sci-fi game in his living room on a Friday night. Are we seriously arguing that pressing X to protect a digital child directly translates into that guy wanting to take out a mortgage, change real-world diapers, and start a family.
It sounds like a stretch when you put it that way.
Right. It feels like giving a piece of entertainment way too much credit for real-world family planning.
It's a very necessary pushback. And to be completely clear, it would be scientifically irresponsible to claim direct one-to-one causation here.
Right.
You can't say, player finishes Pragmata, player immediately has a child. These are incredibly complex life decisions.
Yeah, it's not some subliminal mind control ray coming from the TV.
No, not at all. But we have to look at how cultural trends emerge. They rarely stem from a single source. They build through cumulative exposure.
Okay.
What a game like Pragmata does is fit into and massively accelerate a broader cultural pattern.
So it's not the spark, but it's pouring gasoline on an existing fire.
Precisely. It acts as an accelerator. Even if the game isn't explicitly marketed as some serious meditation on fatherhood, the undertone of genuine care is baked right into the code.
You literally can't beat the game without it.
Right. By continually placing players in scenarios that require protection, empathy, and patience, it offers a really compelling vision of masculinity tied to caregiving.
Wow.
And that vision is clearly taking root. It expands how players understand their capacity for empathy, which inevitably bleeds into how they interact with their real-world relationships.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you spend enough time practicing patience and care in a simulation, you're bound to retain some of that muscle memory when you pause the game and walk into the kitchen.
Exactly. When the media you consume repeatedly rewards you for prioritizing another person's well-being over your own survival, it slowly shifts your internal compass.
It rewires you a bit.
It does. It begins to change not just how players spend their free time, but how they conceptualize their own long-term futures and what they actually find meaningful.
Man, let's pull all of this together for you, the listener, because we have charted a really fascinating course today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We started with a simple image of a lone astronaut wandering through an abandoned, futuristic landscape. And from that one mechanical shift, adding a vulnerable companion who is essential to your survival, we unpacked a massive cultural pivot.
We've watched the definition of virtual strength evolve right before our eyes, from isolation and conquest into a space where patience, guidance, and protective masculinity are the ultimate goals.
Yeah, and we saw how the legacy of the virtual dad, from the grit of Joel in The Last of Us to the amazing evolution of Kratos, has proven that we value building a legacy far more than we value mere survival.
It's a huge shift in priorities.
It really is a powerful reminder that the media you interact with is never truly passive.
Never.
Even when you are exhausted, sitting on the couch and just looking for a couple of hours of mindless escapism, the stories you inhabit are quietly shaping your identity.
They're calibrating your emotional responses.
Exactly, and they are actively framing the vision you hold for your own future.
It's a real testament to the unique power of interactive storytelling.
Absolutely.
When you are forced to earn trust, when you have to physically practice patience to succeed, you are building emotional muscles that don't just disappear when the screen goes dark.
Which leaves us with one final lingering thought to chew on as we wrap up this deep dive.
Oh, I like this.
If interactive media has evolved to a point where it can successfully simulate the heavy emotional weight of fatherhood, to the point where it is quietly influencing how players view their real-world life goals, what other profound human experiences could future games simulate?
That is the big question.
Right. What complex social roles or emotional burdens could developers tackle next to completely reshape our societal values and our capacity for empathy? It really makes you wonder what kind of profound internal shift you might find yourself contemplating the next time you pick up a controller, expecting nothing but a simple game.